here in this short video we're going to have a look at what the difference is between ourselves, the world, the cosmos, and God. Ooh, exciting stuff, yeah? Now, the reason I broach all these things isn't necessarily to be immersed in scripture or religion. It's to also be immersed in human psychology, asking the question, who am I? What am I? And so when we look at what Moses is reputed to have said, hearing the voice of God, who are you? The answer was, I am that I am, which also is translated into I am this and I am that, and I am who I am, and you know, this is what happens with translations from old languages into modern languages and into different languages, whether it's Hebrew or Greek or Latin. We get these variances, which makes it very confusing. So I've got a video here, it's 3.5 minutes long, and I want to play that, and I want to speak about it. But before I play it, I look at this whole I am that I am, and years ago when I first came upon it, I would listen to videos, people explaining what Jehovah, Yahweh, is reputed to have meant when he was evasive. Was he evasive or was he collective in his answer, I am that I am? And so people interpret when they look around at things and go, well, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am. What do we mean by that? When we point to everything, we say we are that, what we are. Well, if we are ready to accept that we are everything and everything is us, firstly, we're made of all the same stuff. If we want to look at it from an atomic, vibratory perspective, then we can say, well, it's all a vibration soup. It's all an atomic soup. So we can say, well, there's no difference between the atoms and the vibrations that we consist of to anything else. It's just, you know, variances and nuances here and there. But collectively, the cosmos is made of the same stuff. I think that's pretty well all agreed on. And if that's the case, then I am that I am that I am that I am. And so we can see then, well, isn't that exactly what God said? He said that he was everything. And when we look for the interpretation of our world about us and what we are, then we end up in the same situation. Why? Because we share in the same consciousness, and consciousness is everything. And so it depends on how comfortable you are in accepting that. People who have been indoctrinated and brainwashed, they wouldn't want to accept that because they've been told they're little, they're small, they're nothing, they're insignificant, and they need to, you know, give fellatio to certain men in the sky. Well, I've never had that persuasion. I don't need to be giving anybody any fellatio in the sky. I look at things in a rational, philosophical, psychological way, and I discern that, oh, lo and behold, I am God. I'm more happy with that rather than the other alternative. And so we can see that I can come to this conclusion, and it's irrefutable. It's logically irrefutable. So when people start interpreting what Yahweh was supposed to have said, then that is no more powerful or meaningful than what I'm saying when I use my own consciousness and explanation of what I see, what I feel and experience about the world. I am that, I am everything. We are everything because we sense everything in here, apparently, but it's even over and above that, because there is no in here. This is only a fallacy. It's only illusion. There is no brain, no human being. There's just a dream that's going on, and it's just one, and there's no separate essences to anything. But you know, we have to break these things down into individuated states of being to have this human experience. But when we raise our consciousness up, we realise that it is only one thing, and we are it. So we are God. And everything that we touch with our senses is us. It's not out there. It can't possibly be out there. There's no way we could know whether it's out there, you see. Why? Because we sense it all in here. We see it in here, we feel it in here, we intuit it in here, we are afraid of it in here, we rejoice it in here. Everything is in here. So therefore, I am that I am. Everything in the so-called exterior and extremities of human consciousness is in consciousness, which is the whole. So I'll play this video and maybe I'll chat about it a little bit after. This is real old school, turning the camera around instead of using screenshot. But that takes 2 more buttons than this one does, so I'll use this one instead. Okay.
What is YHWH? The ancient Hebrew language that the Old Testament was written in did not have vowels in its alphabet. In written form, ancient Hebrew was a consonant-only language. In the original Hebrew, God's name transliterates to YHWH, sometimes written in the older style as YHVH. This is known as the Tetragrammaton, meaning 4 letters. Because of the lack of vowels, Bible scholars debate how the Tetragrammaton YHWH was pronounced. The Tetragrammaton consists of 4 Hebrew letters: Yod, He, Wa, and then He repeated. Some versions of the Bible translate the Tetragrammaton as Yahweh or Jehovah, most translate it as Lord in all caps. Contrary to what some believe, Jehovah is not the divine name revealed to Israel. The name Jehovah is a product of mixing different words and different alphabets of different languages. Due to a fear of accidentally taking God's name in vain, the Jews basically quit saying it out loud altogether. Instead, when reading scripture aloud, the Jews substituted the Tetragrammaton YHWH with the word Adonai, or Lord. Even in the Septuagint, Greek translation of the Old Testament, the translators substituted Kyrios for the divine name. Eventually, the vowels from Adonai or Elohim found their way in between the consonants of YHWH, thus forming Yahweh. But this interpolation of vowels does not mean that was how God's name was originally pronounced. In fact, we aren't entirely sure if YHWH should have 2 syllables or 3. Any number of vowel sounds can be inserted within YHWH, and Jewish scholars are as uncertain of real pronunciation as Christian scholars are. Jehovah is actually a much later variant. The word Jehovah comes from a 3-syllable version of YHWH, Y-E-H-O-W-E-H. The Y was replaced with J, although Hebrew does not have a J sound, and the W with the V, plus the extra vowel in the middle, resulting in Jehovah. These vowels are the abbreviated forms of the imperfect tense, the participial form, and the perfect tense of the Hebrew being verb. Thus, the meaning of Jehovah could be understood as He who will be, is, and has been. So what is God's name, and what does it mean? The most likely choice for how the Tetragrammaton was pronounced is Yahweh, Yahweh, or something similar. The name Yahweh refers to God's self-existence. Yahweh is linked to how God describes himself in Exodus 3:14. God said to Moses, "I am who I am." This is what you are to say to the Israelites: I am has sent me to you. God's name is a reflection of his being. God is the only self-existent or self-sufficient being. Only God has life in and of himself. That is the essential meaning of the Tetragrammaton YHWH. Got a question?
I am that I am. And so, when we look at that and we accept what it states, sounds feasible, uncontestable in its own right. But then when we step into the shoes of Yahweh, Jehovah, when he was repeatedly asked, "Who are you?" If we do that, and if somebody asks who we are, and we go, I am that I am. Well, it's the same thing. The only difference here is that it states here that God is the only independent existing thing. Well, how can we prove that? How can we prove that when our only existence is all that we know? And what we know is that we are everything, because we see, feel, experience everything within this conscious state which nobody knows anything about. It's not like we can point to where it's coming from, where it's emitting, anything like that. No scientist on the planet has ever found it. So isn't that unnameable, really? Isn't that very much like Yahweh or Jehovah? It's an essence that we partake in, that we call consciousness, but we don't know what it is. It's just a word that we ascribe to it. So it seems to me much more logical and reasonable to assume, accept, take on board that all we have been doing in our human existence is projecting out there onto the blank canvas of the cosmos and life something that isn't in actual fact out there. There's nothing out there, it's all in here, isn't it? So there is no God out there up in the clouds, or there's no clouds, it's all in here, everything's in here. So therefore then, that's why I claim, I state, many other people of course, if we're not too anal about scripture, and if we are free from indoctrination, we can look at it logically, rationally, reasonably, like a intelligent person or a philosopher, and we can go, well, we're talking about the same thing here. Call it Jehovah, Yahweh, call it God, call it any of those terms. It's just a projection of what we are, because we can say the exact same thing about us. There is no difference. There is no proof of his existence outside of our own existence. It derives from our existence. And so when it says at the end there, God is the only independent, living, existing thing, no. God exists entirely because of consciousness pertaining from the human beings which create him, the fiction of him, the fantasy of him. There are no birds, no primates, no ants, no slugs, no snakes, which create the fantasy of Elohim. Human beings do it. So God isn't independent of anything else. It doesn't have an existence of its own. That is the fantasy, that is the projection, that's wishful thinking. We create God. We have made God in our image. We are God.